Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll gain confidence, clarity, and a competitive edge in a crowded marketplace so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC complaint against overlay company accessiBe. Stick around to get the details and to find out what this means for you as a website designer or developer. Now, you may have noticed that it's been a while since I released a podcast. If so, thanks for noticing. I had to take some time off, though, to deal with some family health issues related to people and pets. But I was also feeling really burnt out. I hadn't had a vacation in 20 years. And I'd been working between my consulting business and this business every day for 6 years straight. I used some of that time off to not just take some trips to the beach, but to also reflect on some things and kind of like refocus as well. So my goal was to get back into the podcast at the start of the year, and so here we are. Now, if you listen to the podcast and have followed me for some time, or if you've taken any of my accessibility courses, then you're probably aware of my stance on website accessibility overlays. Now, a website accessibility overlay is typically installed by inserting a line or two of JavaScript code on a website. It doesn't affect the site's underlying code. Instead, it works at the browser level. Many overlay companies claim that once you install the overlay, your website will be compliant to a certain degree. And I say compliant in quotes, and you'll understand why in a minute. As you are probably aware, accessiBe is one overlay company. Well, someone filed a complaint against accessiBe with the FTC, and the FTC went and investigated, and they found that accessiBe did misrepresent their overlay's ability to make websites compliant with WCAG, the accessibility guidelines. On January 3rd of this year, the FTC filed that complaint against accessiBe, and they charged them on 3 counts. One was false or unsubstantiated performance claims. The second one was deceptively formatted advertising, and the third was deceptive failure to disclose material connections. And we'll dive into those. Now, as part of this, accessiBe could no longer say or imply that their overlay makes websites WCAG compliant. And the FTC has also proposed an order for them to pay a $1 million settlement. The public is allowed to submit comments until February 5th of this year. The link for that is in the description and show notes if you want to do that. So you might ask yourself, is this a win for accessibility? Well, yes, it is. But the amount that they're being fined, or the proposed fine, is a drop in the bucket for them. They get millions and millions of dollars in funding. But let's dig into the details. Since 2019, accessiBe has claimed that their overlay uses one line of code to make a website compliant, and that's with 30% of the WCAG requirements immediately, and then with an AI process to make the website fully compliant within 48 hours. And they touted on their homepage, #1 web accessibility solution for WCAG and ADA compliance. Not only that, they promised that their overlay would ensure that the website was accessible even when content got modified, because it would rescan the site every 24 hours. All right, well, there's quite a few issues with all of this. First off, not all accessibility errors can be addressed with an overlay. And in the complaint, the FTC noted that the overlay, quote, fails or has failed to make basic and essential website components like menus, headings, tables, images, recordings, and more compliant with WCAG and accessible to persons with disabilities. The FTC later went on to acknowledge that websites using the overlay contained barriers that made it difficult or impossible for people with disabilities to use the website, such as missing or inaccurate alt text, a missing focus indicator, keyboard traps, incorrect heading levels, and issues with menus, buttons, and tables. Now, one example noted in the complaint is a photo of a filet mignon on a ceramic plate. The alt text provided by the overlay was, get this, brown bread on white ceramic plate. Well, why does this matter? Well, in some cases, inaccurate alt text could not only cause confusion, but they could cost a business sales. I mean, steak and bread are entirely different things. What if that image and the alt text were on a restaurant webpage talking about, gluten-free options? The complaint also specified some accessibility issues, such as certain menu tabs being selected when they had not been selected by the user, such as a dessert option that was voiced as selected when the content was actually about appetizers. Another one they cite is button labels that incorrectly indicated when website menu options were expanded or collapsed, and that resulted in certain users not being able to tell if they had opened a menu list or not. Also, improperly coded status or error messages causing screen readers to not notify a user when they added an item to a shopping cart, or if a user needed to still complete part of a form before they submitted it. And then another thing that they cited was improperly coded labels, causing a screen reader to voice a 5-star rating graphic as a previous button instead. Now, these are just a few of the errors that they mentioned, but I hope you can see how these would greatly impact a user's experience on a website. I mean, it could provide them with completely different information than what they should be getting. Okay, so another issue with all this is that accessiBe promised compliance. Well, compliance and conformance are different things. And I talked about this in episode 182, accessibility, conformance versus compliance. But in short, compliance is when a business adheres to a law. And it goes beyond just having a website that conforms to accessibility guidelines and practices. Conformance, on the other hand, refers to a website, an app, etc., adhering to accessibility standards. A company's website could conform to accessibility standards, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the business is in compliance. There are other factors outside of that website or that app or whatever that have to be considered. So it's one thing to say a website conforms to WCAG, but promising compliance takes on more of a legal responsibility. Anyway, this event has been a long time coming, in my opinion. Many accessibility specialists, including myself, have talked about and demonstrated how overlays do not work and that many of them make claims they simply cannot support. Okay, but wait, there's more. And if you haven't already, grab your drink of choice and pull up a chair and listen. They were found to also have paid third parties to publish articles and reviews to promote their product, making them appear to be impartial and independent. Now, this is interesting because some people have speculated this very thing over the past few years. It just didn't make sense that so many people with disabilities were publicly stating that they did not like the overlay, while accessiBe was touting so many happy users who were people with disabilities. Well, on page 18 of the complaint, it says, although the September 25th, 2020 Web Designer Depot blog post is formatted to appear as an independent review, the respondents, meaning accessiBe, paid $1,900 for the review and approved it prior to its publication. Web Designer Depot, one of accessiBe's advertising partners, had also received Access Widget, the overlay, on its website, webdesgnerdepot.com, and 3 others in exchange for additional advertising in Web Designer Depot publications and social media. Not only that, the blog post did not originally disclose the relationship with accessiBe. According to the complaint, it was only after Web Designer Depot got backlash from readers that they added in small print at the end of this enormously long post that it had been published in partnership with accessiBe. Okay, and then accessiBe also paid $850 for a so-called review for uxplanet.org called How to Make Your Website ADA Compliant Using accessiBe. accessiBe's employees and others apparently warned accessiBe about how failing to disclose those material connections in these reviews was deceptive. And as if that isn't alarming enough, the complaint says that accessiBe asked third parties to remove or omit disclosures about the material connections when publishing the reviews. The complaint also mentions that accessiBe knew about the Overlay False Claims website, one that I've mentioned before, since at least December 2021, and that they were tracking the website and any social media posts that promoted it because they wanted to monitor the negative press. It also goes on to talk about how their terms did not disclose, either adequately, if at all, that certain parts of a website, PDFs, PowerPoint files, audio and video files, and so forth, that those would not be made accessible unless additional services were purchased. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Adrian Rosselli too, because he did a great breakdown of this case if you want to check that out too. So what does this mean for web designers and developers? Why should you care? Well, first off, if you have clients who have been pushing you to install this on their website, you now have your case made. Second, if any of your client sites use an overlay, you could approach those clients about redesigning or remediating the website to make it accessible and not use an overlay at all. Remember, overlays do not affect the underlying code on the website, so using the right code from the start or fixing what's already there is a better investment toward making a site accessible. Plus, you have more control over it that way too. Now, even if you know nothing about website accessibility right now, or you're confused about where to get started with it, there are some clear and easy steps that you can take today to help your clients. You can find them out by registering for my free webinar, 3 Easy Steps into Web Accessibility at creative-boost.com/workshop-ready.